Hi and welcome to Ben's Business Podcast, episode number 7. Today I've got my second guest, Craig Herd. Craig Alexander Herd, what do you prefer?
Just Craig.
Craig, okay. We've got Craig here from Habit Hackers. Craig is, I would call, a salesman. He's got a lot of experience in sales. He's an expert in sales. We met through a hashtag, remember, it was Amazon Academy.
Yeah.
We were both at a conference in Edinburgh, and Craig ended up joining my community of avid readers, Ben's Business Book Club, and then from there we got chatting through Facebook. So
I think I DM'd you about the event afterwards on my journey home.
And obviously we're both interested in the same thing. I think that's a great place to find like-minded people. If you go attend conferences, you're going to find a lot of people very similar to you, and that's exactly what we found. So Craig's an expert in sales. He's managing a team of 30 to 40 people for Orbitsound, which is a British audio company competing with Samsung, Sony and Sonos. And he's also started a podcast at around the same time as me. You're on episode 6?
7 or 8 or 9, somewhere in there.
Yeah. And he's also creating I don't know if you've got it with you, but a planner called Habit Hacker. It's a planner. So let's just jump into it and tell us who Craig Alexander Herd is.
Yeah, big question. So it's funny you say salesperson. I've never really thought of myself as that.
Okay.
But I get why. I've done it for so long now. I've done it for really concentrated for the last decade. Someone told me just at the right time that the first skill that you need if you get any interest in business is to learn how to sell. And I learned that from a number of different people. They all said the same thing. It's communication. Sales is the most important thing. So I took a sales role. I think my first ever sales role was when I was about 8, and I opened up I took a big bit of wood and put it on 2 stools and put it outside the front garage and started my own stall. That was my first ever job. And I think about 13, 14 through my teen years, I took regular jobs in supermarkets and then bars and things like that, and soul crushing roles. Then I got back into sales about 19, 20, and I had a sales role selling children's books door to door in England and the US. The most brutal job I've probably had. And I think that doing a job like that's incredible for teaching you who you are and what it's going to take to be successful. And really from that, I'm not 29, in the last decade I've looked to refine that skill, get better at sales, get better at business, and try and figure out how I fit into it, really.
Okay. Yeah, so the one thing I wanted to ask you as well about that was your first business you mentioned before we started this podcast was you were 8, you said?
It was like 7 or 8, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess you had the entrepreneurial spirit from a young age.
Yeah, I think I love that story, or that I remember my parents tell me more about that than I remember.
Okay.
But the reason I love that is because at that age you don't really have a filter. You don't really think about what's my passion or what's my interest or what should I be doing, what should I not be doing. You just kind of do. And so that was the first time I really took that, and I thought, I didn't think I'm trying to start a business. I didn't think as big as that. I just thought, what am I going to do with my summer? And that's what I naturally did.
Yeah.
And I've taken that as a prompt to go creation of business, sales, whatever you want to call it. Doing is something I like to do.
So not football or anything else, start a business.
Yeah, I'm pretty crap at football. I think that I like competing. Okay. I like to improve. There's all these things that sport has, but no, that's not really football for me. Yeah, I think mine is business or sales or whatever you call it.
Your natural hobby. So yeah, I think a lot of business owners maybe find out later in life that that's what it is. Some do find out at a young age and are lucky enough to discover that. I don't think my passion came until my dad kind of pushed it upon me, and then I kind of made a decision when I was 17 to go into business. So I find that quite interesting that you've got that kind of background of doing it. You've done it. I find it interesting, anyone who's done or been involved in what I do any longer than me, because I thought I started quite young, and then when I find out people who started younger, it makes sense because you came across as a person who's been doing it for longer than me, and I always wonder how does that happen. I find that interesting.
Yeah, I like that story, and I've deviated from it. So if I think about when I was 8, you don't have any filter, which is great. So you do what you want to do. But when I was 13, 14, 15, up to 18, I did what everyone else was doing. I did what I thought I was supposed to do. I sat through school, which I hated, and I just looked to do it as best as I can, which I didn't do very well. And if I think about it now, I went to uni because that was what I thought you had to do. I got sat down by the careers advisor and said, you either do a trade or you go to uni. Those were the options. And I went to uni because it seemed the better or the more, it seemed like the harder thing to do. I don't know. But at the time, that's what the smart kids did. That's what they did. So I deviated from what I enjoy doing or what I feel I'm about to do. And then really I found my way kind of back to it. And only now, in the last 5 years, do I really feel on track with what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, because when I first met you, or as I've got to know you, I've found it, or I've thought that you've always kind of had a strategy for your life but that's interesting to know that really you did deviate like I did as well, and I had to refine my purpose and passion. So that's interesting. I always seen you as someone who kind of everything you've done from age 8 or whatever has been strategies, but that's interesting. So you done philosophy at university.
Yeah.
Was that not part of the strategy then? That was just a choice.
I don't know how much strategy there is. I think for me it's just an effort to be, and this is probably a lesson I've learned really in the last 18 months, is when I'm happiest, when I feel on track, is when I feel like I'm being more of myself more of the time.
Yes.
And when I'm really unhappy, or the least happy I ever am, is when I feel really disingenuous to myself. So philosophy, like I say, I really struggled with school, hated school, felt like it was a prison that I sat in for 15 years or however long you are. But philosophy at the time, I was a D and C and F student, but I got a B in philosophy for whatever reason. The way I was wired, philosophy made sense to me, and I didn't have to try as hard to do well in that. So I went, well, let's go do that at uni, because I seem to understand it, and it's a language I could speak. And for the first time, I really felt like, well, maybe I'm not stupid, maybe I'm not an idiot, maybe I'm just wired differently than the average student here. The average person, and that seemed to be the case. I went to uni and did philosophy and found it easier than any subject I'd done before, and that was just an effort to be more of myself more of the time. And looking back on philosophy now, what I take from philosophy and what I apply to business is philosophy is just problem solving. The best philosophy, the worst philosophy is it's all just an idea. People ponder, people just overthink and go around in circles and never accomplish anything. But the best philosophy is when someone goes, look, this is the argument, this is the challenge, this is what people have said so far, this is the best argument that we believe we've come across. Is it any good, and can we push it further? And philosophy at its best is just pushing things further like that. And that's all I get from business, really. It's that idea of, this is what we're trying to achieve, this is how far we've got, this is the challenges, can we overcome it, and just keep going until you get to the end of the argument or end of the problem. Okay, so it's almost problem solving that you enjoy. It's problem solving, or it's moving things forward. It's progress. It's overcoming. It's all these things. Okay. I think when I'm 39, I'll probably have a better understanding of what it is. Yeah. But it's that kind of movement towards something. Okay. And on philosophy, because we're both interested in that, I know the answer, but this is more for the audience and the viewers, because I found your story about the guy interesting. Who's your favourite philosopher and why? My favourite is probably Descartes. So he's come up with some of the most famous, probably famous to most people, philosophy. So he came up with, I think, the 4 I am. That's Descartes. The whole idea of the matrix. That idea that we're a brain in a jar, or we're plugged in and we're not really seeing this. That Descartes is known for saying that. Well, the reason why he's one of my favourites is because he has this great reputation, and he accomplished so much and did so well at something, yet he was a mathematician. So philosophy was something he did in his evenings. And that's just a guy that, imagine the thing that you're remembered for is something you did in your part-time.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to hear that story again. I've heard that, but I found that story, and I went and bought the book. That's why I've got it right here.
Yeah.
After you tell me that story, because I find philosophers interesting. I find that even more interesting that he was well known for his philosophy by doing it just in his part time. So.
Well, I know we've spoken about it before, but a lot of the time, if you're a business owner and you want to become a better business owner, you consume books, you watch YouTube videos, you speak to mentors, all that kind of stuff. But what people typically do is they go looking for business owners, which is useful a lot of the time. But the more you look for people that speak like you and act like you, the more you'll get the same answers that you could probably come up with yourself, because you think and act like the person that came up with it. So why I love philosophy is because if you take that thinking, that figure it out and work through the problem and commit to it and just keep going until it makes sense, until it works. If you take that mentality to business, you'll go a lot further than some of the content that you'll hear business owners say.
Yeah, and I remember in our conversation before about that, as well as I think you mentioned that you done some psychology at university.
Yeah, a little bit.
But you found that you learn more almost about it with philosophy. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's more to do with the level they were teaching it at. I imagine I've learned probably more psychology since uni.
Yeah.
That goes a bit deeper and is a bit smarter and
Okay.
a bit more usable. But I think the course I took was at first year of uni, and it was a tick box. And I remember the exam was multiple choice, so maybe it wasn't the hardest psychology. But I think I really believe in that. If whatever you're doing, it's good to get mentors and look for content in what you do, but I think it's also can be really useful to look outside of your tribe and your remit and what you know.
Yeah.
Because that's when if you can take something really vastly different and make it apply to what you do, that's when you understand what you do better, that's when you get creative, that's when you get new answers. I think that could take you forward a lot faster.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just the idea of getting out of your routine and experiencing new things and new different people.
Yeah.
To bring that back to your world, your business world, and apply it.
Yeah.
In a way that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you always, there's a great quote, I've no idea who said it, but if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always gotten.
Yeah.
So people are creatures of habit, and if they do what they've always done, they're gonna get the same results they've always had.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna change, if you're gonna make impact or improve or deviate from what you currently have, it needs to come from somewhere else, because you are not gonna come up with it. You are the one that got you where you are, good or bad. So if you want to be somewhere else, you need to do things differently. You need to think differently about it.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to go there and bring it back.
Well, if you're not where you want to be, it's because you don't know how to be, or
Yeah.
you haven't allowed for enough time.
Yeah, I agree.
But to assume, and you have to be really honest with yourself, is it enough time? Or, am I, if it's a millionaire, is it that you've not left enough time and you're on the way to be a millionaire? Or are you using phrases like I'm a sleeping giant and my moment will arrive? In truth, you probably don't know how to do that, and that's fine. You just need to go and speak to somebody who does know how to do that, or read the content of someone who knows how to do that, and ignore what you think about it and do what they do.
Okay, that's interesting. So you would, if you figure out that what you've been doing is the wrong thing, then kind of humble yourself to listen fully to the right mentor. But you have to find the right mentor, I think.
Yeah, on what it is you're trying to achieve. So I think that money example is a good one. Running a successful business. If you run a business and you're not creating the sales, if you're trying to generate more sales in your business and they're not to the level that you want, listening to yourself on how to do that is a mistake. You don't know how to do that. You either don't have it in your ear, between your ears, or you're not executing on the stuff you know how to do. So you need to either get someone else to do it, or you need to listen to somebody who has a lot of sales in their business and listen to what they say, not what you think, because they've achieved what you've not. So why would you listen to yourself, not them?
Yeah, they've got the experience and success behind them.
But again, yeah, and it's funny, talking about mentors and what to take them and what to not, is you take the right things from them. So if you see someone who has a lot of sales in their business and that's the thing you're trying to achieve, you copy the habits that they have that created a lot of sales. It doesn't mean you have to take everything from them. There's always that Steve Jobs example. Steve Jobs was an incredible marketer, but he was an arsehole. You know, people famously talk about how Steve Jobs wasn't a popular guy, and there's all these stories of these business owners and marketers in Silicon Valley acting that way because they think they have to. But really, that's nothing to do with being a good marketer. That's just what he was. So take the habits of being a great marketer, take the things that he did towards that, and ignore the other stuff. You don't have to be a rude guy, a bad guy, to be a great marketer. They're not connected. So if you're looking to the mentor, if you're looking to somebody for a skill, for something you don't have, take that skill and leave the rest.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I 100% agree with that. It's a quote, I think is along the lines of what Bruce Lee said. Take everything that's useful and discard everything else. It's along these lines. Discard everything else that's useless.
Yeah.
And pick up only what's useful to you and use it in your life. The other thing, back to what you mentioned, were creatures of habits. Focusing on your Habit Hacker planner. What makes your planner different from the other planners like the 10x planner, the other journals out there?
I think it's built for my tribe. And now I think there's a bunch of planners out there, and they're all built for different people. There's a great one. There's a passion planner. I think it's one of the more famous ones. It's great business. It's built for somebody who loves planning, like really loves it, like it's detailed and all that kind of stuff. 10x planner is probably built for a Grant Cardone fan, somebody who thinks and acts like Grant Cardone. All the rest are built for the right person. For me, it's this connects with the right person. For me, the person who cares about Habit Hacker is the person who has a goal in mind, has big goals in mind for the life, whatever that may be, and they believe, like I do, that the way you reach these big goals is by figuring out what the steps together are and taking the habits and taking the strategy and taking the practice that you need to do every single day to get there. This planner is built for somebody who thinks like that.
Okay.
As well as that, you get kind of cheaper planners. I'm sure you do. You can always find something cheaper. This one is well built because it's for somebody who values that process. As well as that, I think what makes it really different and really exciting is it comes down to really Habit Hackers about three things. It's about inspiration, and it's about community, and it's about the right tools. So the inspiration is we now have a weekly podcast, Habit Hackers Rebel Radio, that's a weekly interview with entrepreneurs, with creatives, with musicians, whatever, but people are on their path. And you were great. You were the first interviewee, episode 2, and you talked about all the things that you know really, really well. And a lot of people listen to that episode and go, "Wow, actually, that makes a lot of sense to me. That guy does that. I can get behind that." And he did things in his own way. And a lot of people talked on our episode. Your episode spoke about your time at school. Their feedback was,
right.
Yeah, I hated school too. Ben hated school. I get that. I get why he found his own vocation. So the podcast is all for the inspiration, is to opening people up to to what is possible, different options about the future. In terms of community, we have a private Facebook group that is solely built to make this whole journey easier. It's really, really hard to accomplish anything great by yourself. So the community is there for anybody who is interested in working towards their future, but could do with a bit of support doing so. So that community is for accountability, it's for support, whatever you need it to be. And then the tools. So that's where Habit Hacker comes in. It's a daily 10-minute practice that allows you to refine your thoughts, cultivate gratitude, focus on your goals, and then allocate your time based on those things, not just filling your time.
Yes. Yeah, because that's what more the 10x planner is more about, filling every minute of every hour. But that's interesting. So it's like every one of these journals are different in a way, you're saying, especially like your one is unique to who you are and who you want to attract into that community. That's kind of, you've got the planner and you've got this community building around it, which I've seen you doing, and that you're doing a great job of that. And I watch your small tips that you put in that group almost daily, and they're very helpful. The next thing was, I've labelled you as the salesman and the expert. I every time I meet up with you, I find that I pick up something about sales that I never knew.
Sure.
And I thought my knowledge was like, I'm a marketer, but I thought when you're doing marketing, you kind of pick up sales tips as you go. So I've got quite good at sales.
Yeah.
And I think you're one of the better, or one of the best salesmen that I've come across. Just your background in it. You mentioned that what was it? I've got a list of them here. You went through, obviously, when you were 8, you started selling, and then you went into 19. You started selling children's books, and then you were making sales for BNI networking group, and then you went on and on to. That's why I thought you had some type of strategy to master sales. So, like I said, I've picked up lots of sales tips from you. How do I make more sales?
How do you make more sales? I think that's a fair comment about. I have spent the last decade really trying to master sales, and there is strategy behind that. In that, I think regardless what you do, understanding sales is fundamental. Really, communicating to your spouse, your kids, your friends, whatever. I think it's really, really important to understand. It depends on your business, but it also doesn't. There's a number of rules for sales. The first one is it's all about the amount of presentations that you do. So this is the biggest mistake I see from people trying to create business in themselves, is they think it's all about you and I sitting here and getting really, really good at this conversation. So if I was the best salesperson in the world and I sold something that you don't need, or there's no way you want, it doesn't apply to you. I sell dresses and it's you. It doesn't matter how good at presenting it I am. It's not going to work. So I hear a lot, especially small business owners, talking about their presentation or being perfect at this. And in reality, it's not going to happen. Everyone's not going to buy it. Not everyone owns an iPhone, and yet they do pretty well. So that the first rule is getting enough presentations in and tracking that as a metric. As well as that, it's recognizing that with every presentation you will get better. So if you were learning guitar, then you wouldn't just do one great hour of practice. You would do 10,000 hours. Who is it? Is it Maxwell? 10,000 hour rule. Whoever said that. 10,000 hour rule is just practice it until you're great at it. So the amount of presentations you put in matters. Having a structured presentation matters. Knowing what you're going to say going into it. Leading with service. We all know, I think we're beyond the age in which hard sales works. That the idea that, when I think about a salesperson, having done it for 10 years, I still think of that sleazy car salesman who's trying to commit you to a car you don't want. I think we're kind of past that. Really, it's leading with service and figuring out, how do I help this person, and does my product fit in there? So those are kind of a couple of things to really start people off in the right direction. How many people? So the amount of presentations you're putting in a week. If it's 10 presentations, and you need 10 customers a week, it's not enough. It's just not going to work. A good rule is you're never going to sell more than 1 in 2 people. Like that's just the kind of law of sales, law of averages. No more than, like, 1 in 2 is really good. 1 in 3 is a good number to shoot for. Grant Cardone, you mentioned Grant Cardone works on the 10x rule. So 1 in 10 people are going to buy. So whatever goal you have, figuring out, well, how many sales do I need to make? How many presentations do I need to make? And times it by 3 to 10, really.
Yeah.
And then knowing what you're going to say when you get there. And those are some great places to start, really. If you're not doing those things, then you're losing out on a lot of sales.
Okay. And you mentioned that it's about bringing value up front. How does one do that?
I think that, if you're a business to your customer?
Yeah, business to business, let's say, yeah.
Sure. I think the thing I've learned in the last 2 years is the distinction between sales and marketing. And I probably 5 years ago would have said sales and marketing is the same thing. You know, it's kind of the same, sales and marketing, right? But I think it's 2 very different things. I think what you're talking about, value up front, is more leading into the marketing, is putting your word out there. That's your YouTube content, that's your podcast, whatever you want to call it. That's your marketing, and that's spreading a wide net. When I think about sales, it is that one-to-one approach. So years ago it would have been the phone book. Nowadays, it might, if it's B2B, it might be LinkedIn, but it's going to individual to individual to individual, building a pipeline of prospects, and working it through like that.
Right. So marketing's wider, you would say, then when you're coming closer to the sale, it's one-to-one.
Yeah, I think marketers would probably argue with me on this, which is great because that's what they do. But I would say marketing is doing a really great job of casting the net. That's your goal, is you want to tell the world what you do enough that they care enough to call you up or to be interested. But sales is that one-to-one interaction, or that one-to boardroom interaction. But that process of taking an individual from potentially never knowing about what you do to then walking away with a yes or a no.
Okay. And in your sales, you've obviously had a lot of sales training. I want to dig deeper into your sales knowledge, because
Sure.
I think there's good value there as well, especially for the people who listen to my podcast. Their main goal is to grow their business. So what other tips could you give on sales? Let's say cold calling, or the idea of closing the sale. Pick one. Yeah.
Well, there's something I can share that if you follow these steps, it will lead to the sale if the sale is going to happen. We can go through that if you like.
Yeah.
So there's something called the cycle of the sale.
Okay.
And this is you get a lot of salespeople in the world. There's a lot of salespeople, and I really believe 99% of them are pretty god awful at it, because they're random, they're unprepared, they have no agenda, they just say a lot and then close hard and try and get someone to say yes. And that's bad sales. That's what most people think of when they think of sales. But good sales, being a sales professional, is about having a structured presentation for what you do, giving that presentation to as many people as possible, and allowing the ones that are going to buy to buy. That's what you should do. So the process goes of really an approach, then an introduction, then your buying atmosphere, which we can go through, and then a demonstration, then your price build up, then your close, then referrals. So that's the structure. So what would be an example of, say, a business with,
let's say, a restaurant? Maybe that's too
restaurant's
small.
tricky because it has a location people
let's
come in.
go
There is a way.
for a plumber.
Plumber. I wish I knew more about plumbing.
You pick one.
yeah, sure. So the first, when it comes to the approach, there's a step just before that. So the pre-approach. So say I'm my business, you're your business, and I'm trying to offer my services to you. The approach is what everyone thinks is the first step. The real first step is the pre-approach. So what research have I done on you? Do I know what you do? Do I know that you run the business? There's no excuse in 2017, 18 to not find these things out. Cold calling is lazy. So if I'm calling on you, whether that be in person or on the phone or email or whatever is the best medium, is who am I speaking to? Who do I know that they know? What position do they hold within the company, say? Just learning a lot about them so you're not cold and reactionary. Also, names is hugely powerful. So if I know, say your business, I know a neighbouring business in your town that you compete with. If I've spoken with, or best case scenario, I have their business, I want to refer to that pretty early on. Because you're going to understand that what they do is what I do, and I want to be ahead of them, so I'm going to at least listen to this guy. So pre-approach is preparing for the call. Now, your first interaction with a person or a business would be your approach. Now, most people think the point of an approach is to sell your services, and even good salespeople think the point is to sell yourself. Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
I think neither is correct. I think the goal of an approach is to start a dialogue. It's the only thing. You don't have to be loved. They don't have to buy into what you do and how you do it. They just have to start talking to you. So that's the only goal with the approach. And there's kind of scripts that if people need, they can contact me about, and the wording of that. But it depends on, that's when your business comes in, and it depends on that. Once you're in a dialogue, you want to first establish what it is, where it is your business fits in, or where it is your services fit in, and that's the introduction. And if you want to break this down, that goes into CLASP, which is current situation, like, adjust, signer, and paint a picture. And this is the most important part of the cycle of the sale, because every other part of the cycle of selling, every other part of this can fall away or disappear, and you'll still get the sale, because this is the most important part. And how that works is you want to learn what their current situation is, because you're just shooting in the dark if you don't know what they're currently going through. What do they like about it? Now, if you're trying to sell a service or a product that somebody has another version of or uses, why would you ask the question, what do you like about your current service? The reason is they'll tell you the reason they bought what they currently have. So if they've got, say, they work with an IT company, and you're an IT company, you want to ask, well, what do you like about your current IT company? And they'll tell you, oh, well, I like that they always pick up the phone. I like that they're fast. I like that they're whatever. And you need to remember that. So your current situation is they have an IT company. They like their IT company because they pick up the phone quickly. Then you want to say, well, what would you adjust? What could you adjust? They say, well, I wish they were, had more services, or I wish they offered this, or I wish we had this. And that's what you adjust. And then you want to figure out signer is, are you, Ben, the person that's going to sign off on this, or are there other people involved? Are there people that influence the decision? And then paint a picture is you want to take the information that you've learned and paint a picture of how it could be. So that would be saying, well, it sounds like you have a really great IT company already. It seems like what you like about them is that they pick up the phone quickly. You just wish they had this other service. What if we could give you a reliable service in which we pick up the phone quickly? We cost about the same as what you spend now, but we had that service. Would you be interested in moving forward with that? So you're taking all that information and you're just refining it to say, this is how we fit into it. And only then do you demonstrate what you do. And
you feel that most salesmen skip all of that and jump right into the hard sell.
Yeah. They know what they do, and so they push hard on what they do. So they, car salesman, we use that as here's the Ford Fiesta, it has this feature, it does this, it does this, it does this. Let me tell you more reasons why you should buy it, and they just throw info at it. Whereas if they'd just taken a step back and said, what are you looking for in a car? What do you care about? Is it safety? Is it Bluetooth? Is it whatever? It doesn't matter to me what you value. I just need to figure out if my product fits in with what you're after and the problem that you have and the desires and the interests that you hold.
Yeah. It's like a good coach or mentor should do very little talking and asking lots of questions. That's something that I've learned doing consultancy, is that I was speaking too much in the beginning, and just like a salesperson should ask much more questions before they then give their advice, because then they can give the tailored advice. We're talking about coaching here, but the same applies to then they can go for the correct close with the right information.
And the thing that's funny, the thing about closing is have a lot of guys, if they're struggling in sales, that they'll come out with something along the lines of, I really just need to improve on my closing. I need to figure out how to close more. And the funny thing is rarely is closing the issue. A lot more of the time it's that their intro is no good. They're not finding a need. They're not finding a compelling reason for the customer, potential customer, to act. They're just learning a bit about them at best. And so the customer doesn't really care about their product because they don't see how it fits in with them. They just think, oh no, it's quite cool. But it's rarely to do with closing. If you sit down with enough people and you present a compelling offer that makes sense to them in their life and the way they do things, you won't need to close. They'll close themselves. They'll go, yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we're running out of time.
Sure.
So I think that's all we've got time for. Thanks a lot for coming over to North Berwick, back to your hometown, and doing this interview. There's been lots of tips and lots of takeaways from there, especially in the sales, which is where I directed it. But thanks for coming, and thanks for sharing your knowledge and wisdom on all that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.